Well, welcome everybody to the special bonus episode of Daily Dose of Aramaic. I'm really excited to welcome our guest today, so I'm just going to begin with his introduction. Dr. Tarsee Lee was born in Brazil to Chinese immigrant parents. He earned the Master of Divinity from Andrews University and the MPhil and PhD from Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. He's professor of Old Testament and Semitic linguistics in the School of Religion at Oakwood University. His research interests and his books, book chapters, and journal articles focus on Hebrew, Aramaic, and other Northwest Semitic languages. As for Dr. Lee's books on Aramaic, a special interest of subscribers to Daily Dose of Aramaic, they include The Verbal System of the Aramaic of Daniel, an explanation in the context of grammaticalization, and Greek indicative verbs in the Christian Palestinian Aramaic Gospels, translation technique, and the Aramaic verbal system. So I know this is going to be a great interview. Welcome, Dr. Lee, to Daily Dose of Aramaic.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And sorry about the long book titles. The reason they're so long is because the books are short. The
Well,
longer
and
the
we want
title, the more limited the subject matter, which I had to do.
we want people to know what they're going to get in the book, right? So,
Yes, yeah.
well, and before we begin, I told you before we started, we have to explain what is your background that you have there.
Do you mean in terms of
The background
where I
behind
was
you.
born? Oh, the background. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That is from Codex Leningrad. And it's the first page, Genesis 1. It's something that's in a public domain. It can be downloaded. And as I'm sure all your listeners will know, Codex L is the basis for the VHS, the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. So,
Yes, it's a fantastic background. All right, so let's just jump in with some questions here. Dr. Lee, could you please share with us what led you to become an academic in the field of biblical studies?
well, there's a long story behind that. I'm not sure, how much time I should take in that. Uh, I was born in a very secular home. We had no
Mm,
religion. My mother was perhaps somewhat of a Buddhist. The rest of my family didn't really have any religion. I had two sisters at the time in Brazil who had joined the Catholic Church, but not because of religious conviction. It was more of a cultural thing. My brother didn't have any religion. Uh, and so I grew up in a very secular environment. And my goal as a child was to become either an electronic engineer or a nuclear physicist. So I was very interested in the sciences, no interest in the humanities. Um, what changed was that after my mother died uh, when I was 12, then a year later I moved to the United States. My oldest sister was living in America, and so I came to live with her and her husband. And it was here in America that I found Jesus. And after becoming a Christian, then my interests changed.
mm.
So I wanted to go into uh, ministry, and well, I think along the way, um, my interest in languages also started. For one thing, they teach English in Brazil as they do in many other countries,
Mm.
but you don't really know any English as a result of the classes. So moving to America forced me to learn a new language. And having to learn English, uh, I think kind of sowed the seed, in my interest in languages. Um, there were a lot of things in Portuguese that we were taught in school, but I never really understood, and the teachers couldn't really explain. And it wasn't until I learned this other language that I began to realize, oh, that's why this is what it is in Portuguese and so on. And I don't blame the teachers. It's just that if all you know is one language and you have to teach grammar, you really have no way of comparing things. So the ability to compare languages is really what helps you to understand your own language. And so that kind of got me interested in languages. But back to my change in interest, back to my conversion story after I became a Christian, then eventually it was time to go to college. So um, I took the courses that you needed to go into ministry, and they just happened to include Greek and Hebrew. And I remember saying, I don't need to know Greek and Hebrew to serve God, but since this is required, I'll do my best in it. Okay.
Right.
As it turns out, by the end of that first year, I loved Greek. I loved the languages. And so I found a new interest. And then, of course, in the seminary, I learned Aramaic in addition to that. And it was during those years in college and graduate school that I began to feel that maybe I could serve God the best in an academic setting. And so that's what got me uh, interested in what I'm doing now.
Mm. Well, it's always interesting to hear people's background story, their life story that has brought them to the field, whatever their precise field is. And a nice common denominator with a lot of the Aramaists who have come before you is just how when they encountered the ancient Semitic languages, that it just did something to them. You know, it was a
Mhm.
life-changing kind of thing. So it's great to hear that. Well,
Yes.
so moving from becoming an academic in the field of biblical studies, do you mind sharing then about your present work at Oakwood University?
Yes. I guess you gave the title, I teach courses in Old Testament and Hebrew. Um, even though I do a lot of uh, my research in Aramaic, uh, I don't have the opportunity to teach Aramaic that often. So in my 20 some years of teaching at Oakwood, I taught Aramaic, formally at least, only twice.
Mm.
And and then the last time I taught Aramaic because the students asked for it, but in a Hebrew class. So it wasn't officially an Aramaic class. And the Aramaic I taught before was the official Aramaic I taught was actually uh, an independent study, but at
Mm.
least it was designated as Aramaic. So, um, what else can I tell you?
Mm.
It's um, it's a um, it's a religiously affiliated school. It's affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's also a um, historically black university, and it's in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yes. Well, actually, this brings us to something that I think that many of our viewers will be interested to hear you share about, which is you're the first guest we've had on Daily Dose of Aramaic who teaches at a historically black university. So this will be interesting. Can you share about any unique aspects of your experience that relate to this environment?
Yes, yes. As you can imagine, there are many unique things about teaching in a historically black university. There are some challenges, and there are some opportunities and joys. So I see both.
Hmm.
Maybe I should share the challenges first. Um, as you would imagine, we are always strapped for resources.
Hmm.
And that means that, it's sometimes hard for me to get the books I need because the library doesn't have it and can't get it.
Hmm.
Um, it's also hard for me to have the time I'd like to have for research and writing. Um, I'm not complaining, but let me give you an idea of what I do. Um, for example, this semester I'm teaching three undergraduate courses and two graduate courses.
Hmm.
Um, Fortunately, the two graduate courses meet together, so that reduces the number of meetings I have. But in spite of having these five courses in one semester, and I'm not exaggerating it, I actually spend more time in committee meetings and committee work than I do in the classroom.
I think
Now, that may
every
not be
professor at
unique.
a school knows what you're talking about right now.
Yes, that is not unique, but still, that is a lot, and it's because of the fact that uh, we're limited in our resources.
Hmm.
So so that's the challenge. The joys, I guess some of them are challenging too, but the joys are also there. Uh, as well, most people don't realize that historically black universities are not homogeneous,
Hmm.
and Oakwood University especially is full of diversity. And one of the joys in teaching at Oakwood is the diversity. So I do have African American students, as you'd imagine, but I have students from the Caribbean. I have students of Caribbean descent from Canada, from the UK. I have students from Africa. Um, we had a whole uh, number of students who came a few years ago who were refugees from Rwanda, for example, from East Africa. I have right now a student from West Africa, from Ghana, in my classes. Um, and so you have a lot of diversity, and in recent years we have had an influx of Hispanic students as well.
Hmm.
So it's a very diverse community. A few years ago, I had a student from Kazakhstan. So just for example, uh,
Yes.
one challenge, which is really an opportunity with my students, is that a lot of the African American students come with the attitude that languages are beyond their ability.
Mm, hmm.
And not all of them, but many of them come with this defeatist attitude that they cannot learn Greek and Hebrew. So they'll take the class, they'll try to pass the class because it's a requirement, but they don't think that they can really master it. And so in the past, in my Hebrew classes, I tried to tell them, look, actually, you have an advantage, not the disadvantage, because many of you speak a different dialect of English at home. And that's assuming the African Americans. If I'm speaking about the Haitian Americans, then of course they speak two languages at home, French and Creole.
Mm,
And so I tell them, because you already know another language or another form of English, you really have uh, an easier ability or easier task in a sense. You have the advantage uh, in learning the biblical languages. So one of the things I try to tell them is that uh, it's not a lost cause for them.
hmm.
In fact, they can learn the languages. They can excel at them. So, that's an example. Another example is just another example of the joy of teaching there is just as I
Yes.
mentioned, the different cultures. And I remember once um, when one of my older students in my class um, had lost her daughter in a car accident.
Mm.
And so, when I found out about it, we had prayer for that student in class. And I noticed after class, I had like three African students in my class. And these African students surrounded the student who was grieving. And they were just trying to comfort him, you know. And I was so touched by uh, that action of Christian love. So,
Yes.
these are joys that come from teaching where I teach.
Mm. Well, that's fantastic. It seems like whenever we contemplate opportunities for cross-cultural work in our field, that really opens up something that's unique that then speaks to us if
Yes.
we're used to a monocultural experience, right?
Right. Yes. Yes.
Cool. Well, this is a little more technical for a question here. Your second book, we
Mhm.
notice, deals with Christian Palestinian Aramaic. Now, we have not yet interacted with that dialect on Daily Dose of Aramaic, which is not to say that we won't. It's just we haven't gotten there yet. We're on Targum Ruth at the time of our recording of this episode. But about Christian Palestinian Aramaic, could you just give us an overview of what is special about this dialect of Aramaic?
Yeah. Christian Palestinian Aramaic was the Aramaic uh, used by Christians in Syria, Palestine, and Egypt from about the third century AD uh, into uh, the beginning of the Muslim era, and
Hmm.
then it continued for a century or two as a spoken language, after which it became only a liturgical language until the 13th century. And what's interesting about it is, of course, it's a Western Aramaic dialect, uh, CPA or Christian Palestinian Aramaic, along with Qumran Aramaic and Samaritan Aramaic, uh, form a group of Aramaic dialects, if you want to call it that,
Mhm.
that have a lot in common. They represent a certain kind of Aramaic. Um, the interesting thing about CPA is that most of the texts, virtually all the texts we have, are translations from Greek.
Mhm.
And because of that, perhaps it's been somewhat neglected
Hmm.
because, you know, we don't have a lot of texts that were originally written in uh, that dialect.
Hmm.
So,
Non-translation.
right, right.
Yes.
So we have some um, more recent work that was done um, in updating some of the texts we have and some of the grammar and so on. And uh, I just felt that there was one area of the language that could use more research, and that was the syntax.
Hmm.
So the book was kind of just the beginning of a research that I haven't finished yet
Hmm.
because of time, which would be the entire syntax of the language rather
Hmm.
than just the limited amount that I did in that book.
Hmm. Well, there's all kinds of questions we could ask right now, but so a Western Aramaic dialect.
Mhm.
How would you say, since you're doing this in-depth study of the syntax, have you detected sort of points of difference between Christian Palestinian Aramaic and Jewish Palestinian Aramaic?
Mm.
I say this because on Daily Dose of Aramaic, we've read some in Targum Neofiti and looked at the fragment Targums. So we've experienced some Jewish Palestinian Aramaic. What should we expect to see different when we get around to Christian Palestinian Aramaic?
Well, the main difference is the script.
Hmm.
So it's written in a script that is very similar to Syriac. There are a few differences, but it's very similar.
Hmm.
And and of course, just as Syriac being Eastern Aramaic is very similar to uh, the uh, Talmudic Aramaic, Babylonian, Jewish Babylonian Aramaic, and so on, even though Syriac is written with different characters, a different script, um, and it's used by Christians, and yet there's so much similarity language-wise between the two.
Hmm.
So you will find a lot of similarity between uh, the between JPA and
Hmm.
CPA.
Mm.
Um, so it's there, but of course each language is unique in its own way, and so there will be differences, of course, as well.
Mm. Well, I look forward to using the fruits of your research when we delve into Christian Palestinian Aramaic here on Daily Dose of Aramaic.
You'll have to wait a couple years probably, but I hope to finish that eventually. Yeah.
Oh, well, that'll just be great. I mean, again, so many questions that I could ask about that, but maybe it'll be more fruitful when the work is done.
Yes.
So, how about this? How about I ask this? Stepping back, what best practices would you like to share for teaching and learning of Aramaic?
Well, most students who want to learn Aramaic begin with biblical Aramaic, and most of them had Hebrew before wanting to learn Aramaic. And so I think just as you did in your book,
Hmm.
I think that's a wonderful idea. We start with what the students already know. And in my classes, when I teach Hebrew, I'm always trying to relate Hebrew with languages that the students know.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of examples of how I do that, but I'll spare you that for now. Um, and so comparing Aramaic with Hebrew is I think one of the best pedagogical approaches I can think of. So when I taught Aramaic, which wasn't that often, but when I taught Aramaic, I used what was available at the time, which was the reference grammar by Rosenthal. But I didn't tell the students now, read this word for word, beginning on page one all the way to the end of the book. What I did was I assigned uh, uh, various paradigms in the book, and then we compared those with the Hebrew paradigms. And that was my approach to teaching Aramaic. And then once we got the basic paradigms down pat and the basic ideas, then we just went to the text and started reading from the text. So for those who already know Hebrew, I think that's the best approach.
Hmm. Well, that's
And I had one
fantastic.
student who was ambitious enough that was the Hebrew class actually where I taught Aramaic,
Mhm.
where he wanted that introduction to biblical Aramaic and he wanted to immediately jump into Syriac.
Mm.
So we got a little Syriac tucked into the course for a week or two.
Wow. Wow. That's fantastic because we normally think of that as a whole separate class, right?
Yes.
Well, what advice do you give then to students of Aramaic to foster maintaining their knowledge of the language once their formal studies are complete?
Nothing beats using a language. So
Hmm.
I recommend to my students that they just keep reading the text. Um, that's what I did, and that's what helped me to keep the languages. Um, just after I finished college, my teachers told me just, make sure you read Greek and Hebrew at least 15 minutes a day. And that's what I did, and that's what I recommend to my students. Um,
Mm,
there's value in the beginning, in the first couple years of Greek and Hebrew, in just learning the most frequently used vocabulary.
mhm,
So that's a lot of memorization, but it saves you time in the long run. But once you've learned that vocabulary, then uh, the just learning more vocabulary doesn't pay off as much. The best way to continue learning vocabulary is to read
mm.
texts, and you will learn more words along the way. And you will also learn the language. It's like we can teach you all kinds of things about the grammar in class, but it's not until you read a lot that you get the feel for the language, and okay, I expect it to do XYZ. When the
Right.
students get to that point, then they will keep the language.
So, out of curiosity, have you had students who have gone on after studying with you Hebrew, Aramaic, Semitic languages, who have then you maintain contact or they come back into your life years later, who have done this, who have kept up their language knowledge, and then they tell you about it? Has that happened?
Not very often. I
Mm-mm.
have had a number of students who told me they tried to. Life just got too busy.
Right,
Um,
right.
and I think there was one student who said that, yeah, he still tries to keep up. He still reads, but again, it's not as often as he would like to. So I
Yes,
understand, but that would be my recommendation for keeping.
right. Well, I'm with you, and that's what my doctoral advisor told me, actually, as I was leaving the academic world after I completed my PhD to be a Navy chaplain. He just advised that there be the continual use and that that would keep it up. And well, that's what happened. And so at least for me, I can say that at least what we try to do on these daily dose channels of providing an easy way to stay in the language each day, that is, it really activates something in your mind that keeps it there instead of
Mhm.
letting it slip away.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Well, that's good, and I'm really thankful for your advocacy of biblical language training. Of course, in your academic works because they're inspirational by themselves, but also in your teaching, and the imparting of a love for biblical languages is not merely for those, I suppose, like you and me, who we don't need much convincing. Once we're exposed, we're like,
Right.
yes, I'm into that. But really, it seems like since the biblical languages are for everyone in our training programs, the kind of student that we have coming through, that anything we can do to help them not only to learn better, like you're saying, comparative language work in the classroom, but also to give them motivation for the future. Anything we
Right.
can do to help with that is kind of like, I would think, our duty as teachers.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I like that. It's like our duty. Sometimes students ask me, and they haven't asked me that recently, but I remember a few years ago, they would ask, why do you want us to learn Greek and Hebrew? What if we never need it in our ministry and so on? And my answer has always been, uh, I don't teach you, or let me rephrase this. When I teach you the languages, it's not because I'm working for your future boss, your future employers. Many of them don't care whether you know the languages or not.
Mm,
But I'm serving Jesus Christ.
mm,
And I have no idea how Christ will want to use you in
Mm,
ministry. And therefore, you need to at least have this background because you don't know if you're going to
mm,
need it or not.
mm. A
So
good reminder for the student that the student has not yet arrived, right?
none of us have. None of us have.
Very good.
I haven't
Well,
either.
indeed, indeed. Well, Dr. Lee, it's been such a pleasure to speak with you, and I really look forward to future opportunities to meet. In case it's of interest to our viewers, Dr. Lee and I had the opportunity to meet for the first time at the most recent Society of Biblical Literature meeting. And so I would say that we advocate these kind of events where we can connect with other scholars because it's certainly been a pleasure, of course, to meet you then, and also to have this
I'm here.
opportunity as a result to have you speak to our subscribers and our other viewers of Daily Dose of Aramaic. So, Dr. Lee, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Let me say one more thing before I leave. I was just thinking about that. You know, um, some people ask, how did you get interested in studying Aramaic? And so let me share a little bit here also.
Mm,
Um,
yes.
I My interest, of course, started with Hebrew, but Aramaic is a language that has many different forms. We can call them dialects. Perhaps not all of them are dialects, but they're different forms of Aramaic. And we have a long time span for Aramaic, and that includes a long time span for the classical Aramaic. But
Mhm.
Aramaic survives even today in some modern Aramaic forms. So we could think of the Aramaic language as having survived 3 millennia. Uh, and
Right.
of course, the old Aramaic, the more classical versions, for at least the better part of 2 different millennia.
Mm,
And so there's a lot of variety there. And what got me interested in Aramaic at first was just the variety, the fact that there was so much there that uh, it's a language related to Hebrew, but here is a language that has uh, a lot of different scripts used. It's found in different geographic areas,
mhm.
different time periods, and so on. And so just that great variety attracted me to it. And I did my doctoral dissertation with one of the great Aramaists in the world, Stephen Kaufman. But
Yes.
after graduation, also, um, I had a friend who told me at one of these SBL meetings, he said, have you attended the Aramaic section? He said, no, these people get along together. They like each other. They don't all agree, but they like each other. And so I said, yeah, I have to check that out because I like the idea of working with colleagues who are nice to each other, you know, who are not uh, who are not calling each other dumb or whatever, but to get along. And so this was also part of what attracted me to Aramaic.
Mm,
Everyone's an
interesting.
individual, and you can't say that all Aramaists are nice people necessarily, but there are a lot of great scholars in the field of Aramaic who are also great people to know as friends and colleagues. So
Well, thanks for that word. And that's certainly been our experience in these special episodes where we have the opportunity to just meet and talk about the passion for this special language. And of course, one of the things that's made it special is divinely chosen to transmit special revelation to us in the Bible. But it's kind of interesting too. It didn't even always used to be a Jewish language. So it's just a fascinating thing how God has used Aramaic in various ways in the history of the world. So once again, Dr. Lee, thank you for your appearance here today on Daily Dose of Aramaic, and we look forward to
thank you for the
various
opportunity.
opportunities to be able to do things with you in the future.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.